Hello friends, how's it going? My name is Matt Barr. You listen to episode 105 of the Looking Sideways Action Sports podcast. It's the show where I explore the most fascinating stories in action sports and other related endeavours. Thanks for listening. Second part of my Portland omnibus, this one. Recorded in late November 2019. I headed over there for a week with my friend Owen Tozer. Spent a bit of time around the city in Oregon and recorded 7 episodes of the podcast. This is the second of that trip. It's with John Rattray, one of the UK's most legendary and certainly best loved skateboarders. John's one of those brilliant UK success stories that seem to mirror the expansion of UK skateboarding as a whole, really. Something we've talked about a lot on the podcast during the episodes about UK skateboarding. And it's kind of difficult to remember now, but back in the late 80s and early 90s, it was really, really unusual for UK skateboarders to make it in the States. I mean, you had the outliers, notably people like Steve Douglas and Bod Boyle. They were followed by people like Jeff Rowley and Tom Penny. But that, it's still a rarity at that point. So when Rattray and his peers came along as part of the next wave of UK skaters to make it in the States, the whole of UK skateboarding cheered him on as one of our own, really. It also helped that John came up skating such a quintessentially dirtbag location as the east coast of Scotland, all rough edges and shit surfaces. Literally and figuratively, it's a very, very long way from where John grew up skateboarding to Southern California. So when he did make the leap, scoring the iconic 4-1-1 part and getting on the international team of zero at the specific request of Jamie Thomas, I think it's fair to say that British skateboarding's collective bosom swelled with pride, really. Today, John lives in Portland with his family. He's working at Nike. He's still killing it, as anyone who follows him on Instagram will have seen. And in recent years, he's been raising awareness about issues that have become more and more prominent in skateboarding and action sports generally, really, in recent years. The topics of depression, mental health and suicide. Now, they're issues that John's been affected by personally, as he explained to me during our conversation, and he's on record as talking about, in other areas. And over the last few years, he's been using his Instagram to try and lead a conversation around these topics and explore ways in which the skateboarding community can help each other cope with what are becoming increasingly prevalent issues, most notably this year with Ben Ramers, of course, very sadly. So I went to visit John and his family at the end of our Portland trip, and we had a very, very open, honest, funny, because he's a funny fucker, I'll say that much, occasionally sad, but ultimately life-affirming conversation about these topics. As you're going to hear, John spent a considerable amount of time trying to understand his own circumstances and the things that have led him to the lowest points of his own life. And then he's also tried to take lessons from those, understand it and communicate these lessons to others in the hope it'll help break some of the taboos that inevitably surround any conversation about these topics. So yeah, there's a lot of levels to this one, and I want to thank John for trusting me to have this conversation and for approaching our chat so openly and honestly. I also want to give you the heads up that we do talk very openly and explicitly about issues that could be upsetting and triggering for some listeners, so please be aware of that. I'm going to include some links at the end in the show notes, which give you further areas to explore if you have been affected or you are generally being affected. It's not an original observation to use a phrase such as fearsomely intelligent when describing John, but it is true, and his quest and erudite approach to this whole issue is really unique and valuable and generous, I think it's fair to say. I sure learned a lot from our conversation, and I hope you do too. I'll be back at the end, but in the meantime, here's me and John Rattray. Enjoy. So it's like 2 years since I was last in Portland 2 years ago, and me and John hung out a little bit, went for a Mexican, I believe, a couple of beers. Bloody hell, that went quick. Yeah, you been all right?
Yeah, still living.
Still living. That's good. Yeah, and you just been away, right?
Yeah.
You were doing
traveling.
Were you doing a panel?
I was in Vancouver, and we did a panel called an event called All Aboard, which was a local little skate event in Vancouver.
Okay.
Organised by the Vancouver Skate Coalition, which Michelle from Antisocial sits on.
Right.
It was pretty cool. There was a panel called Switch that was organised by New Line Skate Parks.
Yeah.
in Everett that works for them kind of put it together, and him and a girl called Rosie from Vancouver, they moderated the panel.
Okay.
And so there's a few of us talking about various subjects from initiatives that skateboarders have been getting after, that I don't know what you call it, like social impact projects.
Yeah, right. It's quite explicitly about mental health and suicide and skateboarding, right?
My one that was what I was getting after. So I was talking about this year's campaign, the Why So Sad campaign.
Yeah.
And then there was Joel, who was sitting next to me. He works at a place called Hull Services and is a youth worker and does therapeutic work with kids that have experienced trauma.
Okay, so there was like lots of different...
yeah, and then Kristen from Skate Like a Girl was there, and her whole program is about youth work and making inclusive spaces for girls and like gender non-conforming people to have a safe place to skate. And then there was Jonah, who does the same thing. He runs Queer Skate Vancouver for the same reason, to kind of try and overcome the homophobia that still persists in skating.
Like the kind of sort of very traditional kind of white male focus of
and
mainstream skate culture.
Exactly. If you're white male skater, then great. It seems very inclusive and welcoming as a culture. But if you're not that, then
I don't know what the problem is.
Well, it's totally inclusive.
I don't see any problem as a white man. It's always been fine.
So that was really interesting to hear from him. And then Joe Buffalo is a First Nations skater who was talking about just the systemic racism that his people have had to deal with over the years.
Right.
In Canada specifically, but I mean that exists in the United States as well. So it was just super rad and interesting to hear from everyone and have those conversations.
There's a lot more of those conversations being facilitated in skateboarding right now, isn't there?
Cause it does seem that way. I'm stoked.
Pushing Borders as well, right? Which is, I went to in London last year and did a couple of these interviews there, and I thought it was great. I thought it was a really interesting thing that they were trying to do, and like a really, really interesting to have like a different dialogue and narrative in skateboarding generally, and it was also just like, really thought provoking, the discussions. You were on a panel for that, right, this year?
Yeah, I was on not so much a panel. There was myself and Madeline opened the conference just with personal stories about what we've been getting after and what we've experienced, specifically around the subject of mental health. And obviously skateboarding is a common thread because we're all skaters.
Yeah. So how was the event? Was it good?
Event was amazing. I'm so impressed by what that crowd pulls together.
Can of Guinness opening alert.
Oops. Yeah, hopefully they manage to keep it going. I know it's all voluntary run, and they fundraise a bit, manage to pull it together. But I feel like it's important to keep that stuff going.
What else was being discussed at that event?
Let me think. The day I was there, after me, there was... God, it's a while back now, and a few things there's a bit of water under the bridge. But there was a panel of people talking about... It was essentially academics that are doing research projects that have that are based on skateboarding, and their kind of struggles with the academic world and their reasons for doing that, and the sort of backstory of what their theses. I think the plural would be feces. Yeah. That was super interesting. I know there was stuff about like that. Honestly, I can't remember.
Well, there's like I think there was misrepresentation or like representation in media debate, wasn't there as well? And like
that was the second day though. I was only there for the one day.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Yeah, there was stuff about media, stuff about I think skater owned versus corporate owned in skateboarding. That I missed that one too, thankfully.
Thankfully.
Yeah, I'm kind of done with that subject.
Yeah.
And then can't remember what the other ones were. I'm sure that'll come to us as we speak.
Yeah. But yeah, like you say, positive thing, like good that
The whole thing, yeah, really good. I wanted to keep going every year and more of it. It's actually, when we were in Vancouver, Kristen had a good point. She was like, why don't they just make it kind of like the TED model, where it's just the platform and any group wherever can
move around,
can have a mini pushing borders.
Yeah, and that's a good idea, actually, isn't it? Yeah, because like you say, it's a lot to pull together for that, for a voluntary group
for that
of people.
particular core group.
Yeah.
That did the first couple. I mean, they can still have like the big one each year if they want, but why not have sort of satellite events?
Yeah,
Whenever people, like local organizers, can get it together. I think that's great.
So did you, because you also did Why So Sad mission in Scotland, so did you tie that in at the same time to that trip?
That was the same trip. Yeah, I was back anyway, just on personal trip. I haven't been back for about 3 years.
Yeah.
So me and Philippa and Ivor saved up. I don't know if we actually saved up or we just put it all on a credit card. Can't remember.
Yeah.
Don't want to remember. I'll remember when I look at the credit card statement, I suppose.
Yeah. It's all just meaningless numbers
it's
on
all,
a
on
a computer
just an imaginary agreement that we have with each other.
It's all a construct that doesn't actually mean anything. That's why I always tell myself when I get the credit card bill.
Yeah, there is a contract there though. So
I mean, it is real.
Debt is a real agreement that we make.
It is real, obviously, yeah. But
so, anyway, no. But we were back. Yeah, we were back there
try not
anyway.
to get too stressed about it personally. Yeah.
We were back there anyway. So headed over to that while I was there, and then got back from that, and then did the first leg of this year's fundraising mission.
Yeah. So do you want to explain for people listening who don't know what that is, what that is about?
Yeah. So I did. For 3 years, since 2017, I've been fundraising at first just for the Scottish Association of Mental Health. And then this year it was for the Scottish Association of Mental Health, Grassroots Suicide Prevention in the southeast of England, who are based, I think, around Brighton area. And then I also raised money for the Johns Hopkins University. There's a research group there.
Yeah, they're doing like the psychedelic research,
doing
right?
the research into uses psychedelics to treat major depression, addiction, and trauma.
Really
super interesting work.
Yeah, like really growing field, isn't it? That?
Yeah, they just opened up a whole new research facility and got like millions of dollars worth of funding. So that stuff's all kind of kicking off again. It's super hopeful.
Yeah, to
hear about that. Did that this year. Yeah, and that was based because that all the fundraising I've been doing was on the back of my sister took her own life back in 2011, and so it took a few years to get over that to the point. Well, you never really get over it, but grieve through it to the point of like, I want to do actually something about this, and that has just been, hey, have the conversation, spread awareness that it's mental health is the same as physical health. Your brain and your emotions are not some esoteric non-physical thing. It's all based on biology and chemistry.
It's as legitimate as physical.
Yeah, and there's actions and that you can take to work through things and heal. Yeah, the same as you can heal a broken leg. There's
a really good line in your blog about which people have seen quoted online about being lost in the dark with a map.
That's kind of, I don't know where I came up with that analogy, but
it's a really lovely means of expressing it though, right? And it seems that the fundraising, the conversations, the stuff that you're doing is about facilitating that, right? It's about basically try to contribute towards giving people the tools to learn to cope with it, right? Like whether that be talking about it or acknowledging it, but also as you rightly say, like saying to people, there's actually things you can do here that are proactive and that will help, right?
Yeah, I mean, I believe for a lot of people anyway. I can't say for everyone, and I'm not an expert either. A lot of it's based on personal experience of kind of working through pretty deep depressive episodes, and reading about it and getting the sense that the more we talk about it and the more you give people that knowledge that your depression doesn't come from nowhere. It feels like it does, but when you think through your history, and from what I've read, the depression and the anxiety that you experience as an adult is based on things that like concrete things that have happened to you that you can identify and then give yourself a break.
As in, what, like past traumatic episodes? Or?
Yeah, a lot of it comes back from stuff that happened to you when your brain was still developing when you were a kid.
Right. And that then, because it's not something I'm that familiar with, so what studies have shown that is what leads to the feelings and the depression that you might experience as an adult, basically.
Yeah, which, I mean, it doesn't diminish the feelings you're actually feeling as an adult, but I think that knowing that they come from somewhere concrete gives you sort of an avenue to explore and to be able to, you know, recognize where things are coming from and
reconcile.
Like I'm saying, kind of give yourself that break, ultimately.
Well, another thing I read in one of your blogs was you talking about humans as like storytelling animals and like, you know, credulous animals, like, and, you know, the importance of like basically owning the story, right, that you tell yourself and almost recontrolling that story in a way that enables you to move on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's, recontrolling is, what do you mean by that?
Well, maybe just controlling, you know, rather than like not passive is the wrong word, but trying to change it. I guess
I think that's kind of what we're getting at.
Just something like, that fundamentally, you know,
knowing where that's what I mean. Okay, there's a couple of different things that there's three really important books that I've read over the last couple of years that have kind of helped me understand what's going on with depression and anxiety in adults. One of them was Lost Connections by Johann Hari. The other was Waking Up Alive by Richard Heckler. And the other was How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. Which one did I start with?
Johann Hari.
And he talks about the rise of depression and anxiety in developed nations over the last 50 years or whatever. And he puts it down to a few different contributing factors. One of which is the loss of social connections that we experience as a culture as we kind of like have moved around the world and become more insular and more online and less connected to our neighbors, and we've basically evolved away from the original tribal systems that we evolved in as a species.
Yeah, like more overtly human, like one-to-one forms of contact,
so
into like a disembodied, like digital form.
Yeah, I guess the idea is the Industrial Revolution and the technical revolution that we've experienced has happened much quicker than we can evolve to keep up with as a species. So there's an inherent like loss of social connections that we've experienced as a result, and that in turn kind of
catalyzes this.
Exactly. Yeah, catalyzes these feelings of disconnection from our there's fellow humans in the world.
There's a line of argument that basically, you know, the two biggest communication revolutions in history, like the Gutenberg press, obviously the printed word, and now the internet, right? And the Gutenberg press has taken however many hundreds of years for people to like get used to that way of exchanging knowledge, and you know, the fact that like suddenly people could get the Bible like more easily than, you know, all that stuff, like, and then the internet's come around so quickly and like re-scrambled it so dramatically that I guess it's a similar thing. People are still in the very early stages of understanding like what effect that has on you as an individual, and just learning how to communicate in that new way, right?
Yeah, and I think it's not just the internet, it's before that. It's like, you know, since post-World War II, cities have been built based on the ownership of private automobiles, where you're like enclosed in your car. You get in your car in the morning, you drive away, you don't talk to your neighbors. Like, you know, that it's been kind of an ongoing thing for a long time now, that we've become more disconnected from our peers in our communities.
So he draws that link in this book, quite explicitly.
Honestly, and then it brings me back to skateboarding as a community. We're kind of lucky because we've got an inbuilt community that we can leverage to reestablish some of that stuff. You know?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah.
The other one, then the next one was the Richard Heckler book, Waking Up Alive. That's Heckler was I don't know, I think he still is a counselor and psychologist from the Bay Area. He wrote a book where he pulled together like multiple case studies on clients that he'd had, or patients that he'd had that had attempted suicide and failed to die and then come through it,
Wow.
through counseling, and gone on to lead like great lives.
Right.
You know, and so looking at all those different cases, he identified 3 common themes in every single case of somebody that's ended up going all the way down into what he refers to as the suicidal trance that leads you to have those thoughts and make that attempt. And those 3 things those 3 factors were extreme family dysfunction, traumatic loss, and the sense of alienation, which is also that kind of idea of loss of social connections.
Sure. And
just that's kind of when I started to think like, okay, there's 3 concrete things that you can use for yourself to, if you, I don't know, I don't want to say what people should do or say what's the right thing to do, but if you don't have access to professional counseling or therapy, at least then that's 3 things that you can use to try and look at your own past.
Yeah.
And be like, why do I feel so fucked up right now? And starting to have do that sort of introspection and that investigation into yourself can help you get through where you're at currently. Yeah. I think. Sure. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a professional.
Yeah, but this is like the work that you've done to try and understand what your own experience, basically.
Yeah.
And what was what you said a third?
The third one was How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. Michael Pollan's written a few books over the years. This one, he's an awesome old writer. I say old, that's ageist, probably. He's rad. He was interviewed by Tim Ferriss at South by Southwest. I saw him talk. I'd heard about his work a little bit before that, but was super interested to hear it. So he did The Botany of Desire and a couple of other books, and then this is his research into the resurgence into that Johns Hopkins work that we were talking about, psychedelic compounds as treatment for major depression.
Microdosing.
No, macrodosing, dude.
Macrodosing.
Yeah, no microdosing here. This is full on Terence McKenna macrodosing.
Really?
This is like therapy.
Okay.
In a single big experience to called dissolve your ego, and aka stop the ruminating narrative that's constantly going in what they call the default mode network in your brain. Yeah, the inner. And allow yourself to be able to see what's been going on in your life and kind of do some rewiring. And I will stress as well, because I've listened to Tim Ferriss a couple of times on this, this is not a DIY approach. This is not go and take a bunch of acid in your kitchen on any given Saturday and think that you're going to solve all your problems. This is clinical trials that are going on at Johns Hopkins in a professional setting, in a guided setting. And I think Ferriss had a really good analogy. He was like, think of this in terms of if you had a paper cut, you might go and put a bandage on, like a little bandage on it. This is more like open heart surgery. You're not going to do that in your kitchen on your own. Do it in a professional setting. And then, that's when it can have proper therapeutic benefits.
Have you explored that yourself?
No. I'd like to.
And what do those treatments look like? Well, I'll be explicit.
I don't know. They're still just in the university right now, and
right. So it's not. It's literally.
I don't think it's. I don't. Yeah, it's literally just still research at this point. It was research that was going on in the 50s and 60s that was seeing some good results. Harvard was a famous place. There was a few other areas around the United States, and I think in Europe. Aldous Huxley famously wrote about an experience he had in The Doors of Perception. That was kind of like going concurrent with some of the research that was going on back then. And then, if you've heard of Timothy Leary.
I was going to say Timothy Leary. So is this, because the ego loss thing that you mentioned earlier was obviously like a very strong message of that early LSD movement right in the 60s, which was very much pioneered by...
I think the problem was Timothy Leary and crew at Harvard kind of... this is what is covered in Pollan's book. They kind of went a bit overboard with it and kind of took it out of the research. They were a bit... I don't want to say they were responsible.
They were in the kitchen.
They took it out of the...
Metaphorically doing open heart surgery in the collective kitchen, if you will.
Yeah, they went buck wild with it, basically.
Yeah,
It probably wasn't the right thing to do at the time.
Sure.
I think the Nixon administration just went in on the war on drugs at that point.
Yeah.
Everything got shut down, funding dried up, and then 40 years went by, and
it's only now being kind of rehabilitated.
40 years went by, and mental health as a field in medicine didn't really make any leaps or bounds at all.
Sure.
And going back to Johann Hari's book Lost Connections, the opening of that talks about where we're at with like selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors and all the kind of pharmaceuticals that they're currently that are supposed to treat these problems that don't, we're not sure if they really do.
Right.
So it's a really interesting field, basically.
Yeah.
And all of this is why I'm fascinated, because I've had my own experiences of depression. My sister did too, and it ultimately resulted in her losing her life.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at. And the question this year, why so sad?
Yeah.
Is what I realized is the ultimate, like, least amount of words you can have to make a question that is the ultimate question that we need to answer for ourselves, or to help our friends answer.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, look inside yourself, and there is a reason. If you're feeling depressed, there's a reason for it that you can figure out and kind of help defuse your current feelings.
So how long did it take you to get to the point where you could feel like that? And
like, let's see, 2011, my sister died. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 6 years.
And was that basically how long it took to, go through the kind of stages of grief to acceptance to understand?
Yeah, I think so.
Right.
Yeah, I know what you're getting at. There's like, I've read a little bit about that. There's like the stages of grief that you go through that you don't know. You don't logically go, oh, now I'm going through the acceptance stage or whatever. But yeah,
it's a
when you look at it in hindsight, you're like, oh yeah, I did go through all that stuff.
You can recognize that. Yeah. And so, and you've channeled this into these. So you've been doing this for 3 years, you said?
For 3 years. At first, honestly, when my sister first died, I did a full 12-month installment comic that John Horner illustrated and was published in Thrasher. And that was, the subject of that was more like about me being a kid when our dad died. So it was almost like 20 years later, I was at that point when what happened to my sister, I was then just forced into actually using a creative outlet to grieve for what happened to me, and when my dad died when I was 13 and she was 10.
Right.
So that was an interesting thing in retrospect a couple of years later to look back and go, that whole comic
that's what was going on,
kind of preempted by the grieving of my sister's passing, or the shock of that, but the subject matter was something that happened 20 years previous.
So it took you that the subsequent work to understand that?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. That's why I can articulate it now. I couldn't at the time.
Right. So you could look back at that and start to get some answers.
Yeah, but we're getting pretty deep pretty quick here. Is there anything more light you want to talk about?
How the sad plant's going?
It's funny. Okay, when I was in Vancouver, there was questions that came, we did the talk. It's explained similar stuff to what we just talked about right there.
Yeah.
Like, hey, here's what it's all about. Here's why I've been doing this work. Here's what happened. Here's what I've kind of learned. And then one of the kids I couldn't see, it was dark. We were under spotlight or whatever. One of the kids is like, yo, this is a question for Rattray. And I'm like, oh God, okay, what is it? And he's like, what's up with you telling us that our sad plants are not sad enough? What kind of message are you sending? Because I'd been like, because Lance had hit Lance Mountain. So here's where the Why So Sad thing really started. I was in Copenhagen 3 years ago, I think, and I was talking to the footwear designer from Nike, and I was talking to him about the eggplant mission, the first one we did, and I showed him the picture of the eggplant. I was like, look, it's pretty sick, right? Pretty stoked on this. And look, check this sad plant I did. And he was like, is that a sad plant? I'm like, I think so.
It's not a sad plant, mate.
I think so.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, is it? And I was like, well, who would know? Lance. Lance would know.
Right.
So I texted the picture of what I thought was a sad plant to Lance. And I was like, Lance, how's this sad plant?
What was the verdict?
He just texted me back a picture of someone from back in the day. And I can't remember who it was because the picture got lost from my phone or whatever. but it was someone doing the gnarliest, like tweaked out, front leg fully locked, completely vertical sad plant on a vert ramp somewhere. And I realized, like, front leg.
Yeah.
Front leg has to be as straight as an arrow.
Fully locked. Yeah.
Locked. My front leg was still bent. So that's when I was like, well, Lance is classically trained vert skater. Grosso, all these guys are classically trained. They have, if you're going to do it, you need to do it the way that they're doing. Otherwise, it's not a sad plan. It's almost a sad plan.
Yeah, right.
But that's where that started. So then once the good egg had happened a couple of times, that was the first 2 fundraising missions. I was like, okay, I've done plenty of eggplants. Now what next? The sad plant made sense just because of the pun. Again, another pun. Why so sad?
Yeah, why the eggplant originally?
Because the good egg is like a pun of like doing some philanthropy, basically.
Okay, right, yeah.
But the why so sad is much more direct, because that's the question we need to answer for ourselves. Anyway, that was it. Lance basically called me out, and I was like, right, that's it. I'm going to do a proper sad plan. That's the mission. So I did one in Clatskanie, Oregon, on the second mission we did this year. And from the angle that we sent to Lance, the fisheye angle from the side, I sent it to him, and he said it looks pretty good.
Nice.
But if you really look at Scott Pommier's angle that is flat from the other side, you can see that when I landed, I don't even want to say it. The photo that Ari shot is solid.
Yeah, you're happy.
And Wig shot a photo of one in Falkirk, Scotland, that's solid.
I saw that one, yeah.
But the video footage is not quite there, but the one in Clatskanie is good.
Yeah.
And I now feel like, given a good session, I could do a legit sad plant that Lance would be proud of.
Nice. So what did you say to the kid?
Oh, I told him, because he was like, what's up with that? And he said that,
That's
and the
so
second
funny.
part of his question is, what advice would you give to people who, are struggling with their mental health? What I said is actually on video. We could watch it right now. The video just went live from that panel.
I'll put a link up.
I think what I said was something along the lines of, I told him about the Lance thing, and I got called out, and it doesn't come from a place of malice. It comes from a place of love. All that I want to do is make us all do the best sad plans we possibly can.
Yeah.
And in terms of how to think about our own mental health and our friends, it's just about, hey, you can be direct with your friends, look out for them, and it's okay to have these conversations. And mental health is a physical thing.
Yeah. So that
to talk about.
You mentioned the skateboarding community is a counterpoint to this lack of.
I like to think that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a very sort of concerted part of this, to basically really sort of remind people of that.
Is we have a network inbuilt. We have friends all over the world.
Yeah.
We have close friends that we've grown up skating with, that these conversations, there's a hard way into it. Oh, that was the other thing. The point of the Why So Sad kind of whole campaign is to find a fun, sort of light-hearted entry point into a tough subject.
Yeah.
As well. So it kind of like there was 2 sides to it.
See, and you did the social kind of, I'm going to say campaign, but whatever, like you did the Instagram thing where you were getting people to send them to you.
Yeah, you can call it a campaign. Campaign's not a dirty word.
Didn't want to overstate it.
It's associated with marketing, but
yeah. Hey, we've all done a bit of that.
But marketing can be used for the power of good.
We've all done a bit of that in this room.
That's what the money makes the world go round, I suppose.
Yeah. No.
And this is used to make money to then fund people doing good work. So that's the idea of it.
And how's the response?
Response has been good. Yeah, I want to keep it going.
Yeah.
We've got a video we just did. Ewan Bowman came on the America leg of it. So Benji Bateman filmed the Scotland stuff, and I put together an edit of that, and then Ewan came on the America one, and he's put together a rad edit of that, and that'll come out on Thrasher in January, along with the real board that is sitting in that deluxe box over there.
Yeah, you got the boards. Yeah, amazing.
You can pull it out, but we're on the radio, so
I'm not shy of talking about things that people on there can't see.
But you can put it on the post that goes along with
hold
you
the
can put it
board
on
up.
the post along with the, because you have a post. So
I
you can
do
put
have a post.
You can put a picture of it on there.
I do have a post. There we go. We're looking at the skateboard.
Take a picture.
Yeah, we go. It's getting on meta. Yeah.
And you already got pretty deep, pretty meta.
Yeah. There we go.
And this is rad as well. The kid that called me out in Vancouver, his photograph
He's
is
on there.
right here.
Rad.
On the montage on the top graphic. So I was pretty stoked because afterwards he came down, him and his buddy, we were chatting and we were laughing about it. And I was like, oh, let's check if you made it onto the montage. And there he was.
If you made the cut.
Yeah.
And he did make the cut.
Pretty stoked on that.
And you've also been doing the bike missions as well, right?
I mean, yeah, the bike mission's part of it. It's always been like, ride 100 miles and do a trick.
Right. Okay.
That's as imaginative as I could get.
Do the journey.
Yeah.
And then
you do the journey and then you do the trick. Yeah. Because when I first started it, the other reason I started this fundraising thing is because all of a sudden there's like 35 different apps you can use that are tied into, that do the fulfillment of all the money raised and all that.
Oh,
so
yeah,
it doesn't even hit my bank account. It's just like, some third party called Just Giving. Yeah, there's GoFundMe. There's all these different ones. So boom, you do it. You sit there and you do it, and you're like, you put your little campaign together.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't just ask for money for nothing. You got to do something.
You got to do something.
So I was like, I like riding my bike and I can skate.
I'm going to trek to base camp. Can you sponsor me?
Yeah, you can do. Yeah, whatever it is.
Yeah. There's a few.
So this was, I'll ride how many miles? 100 miles.
Yeah.
And what trick? A trick that allows me to create a pun in the campaign title.
Yeah, it works for me. Yeah. Are they going to be released? Can people buy them? Like,
they'll be out in January. Yeah.
Okay.
Mid-January they'll be hitting shops.
Yeah. Okay.
If the shops buy them, but hopefully they'll buy them.
You talked a lot about Ben Ramers when you've been doing this as well.
Yeah. So the Why So Sad one. I sparked that off in June this year, and obviously Ben passed earlier in the year, to everyone's shock.
Yeah, I mean, it hit the community very, very hard, didn't it?
Yeah. So that's been a big part of this. The money from this board will go to
the foundation.
At least a big chunk of it will go to the Ramers Foundation. It's trying to figure out something to do with the money in North America. I could give it to the organizations we've already been fundraising for, but the Ramers Foundation is now set up, so we'll give some of it to that. I'd also like to do like a specific event where we do some training, like mental health first response training or assist suicide prevention training with community leaders in skating, like some of the TMs.
Right.
Maybe whatever event where we can get a bunch of them together.
Right.
And then it's good. Hopefully, I mean that's the idea anyway. Instead of just showing up at the event and going to the after party and drinking some beers, hey, let's sit for 3 hours and do a course that you can put on your resume and actually have some new skills to take back to life and help some skaters, hopefully, or people in general,
Yeah. It seems like what happened with Ben shocked people because it's so unexpected and seemed like something that, in retrospect, if you could have helped him, obviously, go work through what he was obviously hiding quite... what's the word I'm looking for? What people basically didn't understand how much he was going through and how much he was struggling. So is that one of the main reasons why you wanted to kind of raise awareness, give people this platform to talk about it, so that they can understand that that's important, that step?
It's so hard. Like, I don't have all the answers, or maybe not any answers. I don't know. The Ben kind of being who he was, and nobody really seeing how much he was struggling that's one of the main problems of all this.
Well, it's a really common story, right?
And I just hope that the more we talk about it and the more we have these kind of conversations and things like Why So Sad are out there, like with the dialogue going of like, hey, everyone goes through this to a certain extent. It's okay to talk about it. It's not going to turn people away. You can open up to people about this. If you are thinking about suicide, tell your friends you can get help and you can get through it. Here, the more we put that out there. The Heckler book, for example, is really hopeful to me because that's like multiple people that he's worked with that thought they were at just rock bottom and there was no way out. There's some pretty gnarly stories in there of people that got real rock bottom.
Yeah.
Who came through, got it together, and got their lives going again.
And it's ultimately
and it's like,
a positive
no matter
thing.
how hopeless you feel, and depression will make you feel like you are done. It makes your brain lie to you. You know, no matter how hopeless you think things are, it's never as hopeless as you think.
And that's something that you've learned to personally get your head around a bit more as you've done this work and like tried to understand.
Yeah, and I've been in that place a couple of times, briefly, thankfully, never for too much of an extended period of time, but when I was in my early 20s, before deciding to be a pro skateboarder, I ended up like in a pretty dark place. And then, yeah, honestly, a couple of years ago, I had my second midlife crisis, I'd call it.
Second?
Yeah. Or I don't know, hopefully, maybe that was my midlife crisis. If that was my midlife crisis a couple of years ago, then that's good. If that was the mid, then the mathematics and the arithmetic gives me solid innings, as it were. And that wasn't quite as bad, but there were moments of depression 2 or 3 years ago where it was flashing into my head.
Right, you recognized it. And why did you? What do you think pulled you out of that in the end?
Maybe just that belief always deep in me that this is just fake. This is my brain being fake to me. Like being lucky enough to be able to rationalize it all the way through.
Right.
And be like, no, this is your brain being fake to you. Don't listen to that. Let it go. Having some semblance of mindfulness I've learned over the years by osmosis or default.
Right.
Probably lucky in that respect.
When you say your brain talking to you, you're talking about, you used the word ego before, and you used a phrase I wasn't familiar with. Default mode, was it?
Yeah, the default mode network is where they believe the ego resides in the brain. It's where the sort of ongoing narrative that you hear in your head.
Is that what you're referring to when you say your brain?
Yeah, ego narrative is how Michael Pollan refers to it. I don't know where he, what neuroscientists or psychologists he's kind of referencing in his research. He obviously did a ton of research, and then I'm just referencing him.
That's allowed.
Yeah, but
right. So when
but that is the part of the brain that it's suggested that these psychedelics kind of like suppress, so they stop that kind of constant narrative going.
Right.
I don't know. Everyone mustn't recognize it in themselves.
Oh,
right?
completely.
Like it goes, and it can either be positive or negative. And it can be more negative based on what happened to you when you were a childhood. When you were a child.
Everybody completely recognizes it. I think everybody recognizes when it gets overbearing to a certain degree.
Yeah.
I think I've personally never experienced it to the levels that I've heard friends describe it as. But everybody completely recognizes it, and I mean, it can be something as like trivial as a hangover, right? That like actually causes that voice to change, and you feel like you're not in control of it. But I often personally feel like this is why I kind of talked about the story thing that you mentioned before, like that we talked about earlier, like being in control of the story that you're telling yourself. Right. Almost.
Exactly, yeah. If
I feel like I'm in a mentally healthy place, then I feel like I'm in control of that story, and then that gives me permission to act in a certain way, if that makes sense. When you don't feel in control of that, then that's obviously when you don't act that rationally sometimes.
I think that relates back. The video that we made that I said Ewan did the America leg of it, we'll drop that in January when the board comes out and all that. In that section of it, I talk about that time when I came back from the States, like distraught and like holed up at my mum's house.
This is when you were younger?
Yeah, when I was about 21, 22 or something, just after university, before I'd fully decided to pursue a career as a pro skater.
Yeah.
Then I realized I talked about the reason I got through that was because I got back to my mum's house and I had like space and a safe place to hole up and get through it.
And work your way through it.
If I was going through that and didn't have anywhere to go, like was homeless or was going back into an environment where there was abusive family or, or whatever.
Didn't have the support network.
I can see exactly why people just get pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed.
Yeah.
To the point of no return.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. Like sometimes it seems hopeless. You just hope that most people, or as many people as possible, can find a safe place. But there is always going to be people that can't. I think about myself as like, I had an alcoholic dad that we never knew what was going to come through the door when we were kids, but then he died when I was 13 and Katrina was 10, after like just chaos childhood. And then I'm like, but I was one of the lucky ones. Yeah. Because I actually had like a completely supportive and solid, stable like network of family and friends around me that were all well-adjusted adults. Lots of people don't have all that. Yeah. They just have chaos. Yeah. So.
And that voice. Yeah.
And then that's where you end up growing up, and the voice in your head is the chaos one. Not, I have plenty of stability in my head to counterbalance the chaos. So
sounds like those two episodes, like transitional periods, maybe. You're saying like between university and pro skateboarding, and I'm guessing maybe the second one, like the end of the skateboarding career and what you can do next, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. I think I would say. Yeah, looking back at it, I'm still going through the life after skateboarding thing, to be honest. Skateboarding as a pro career, it doesn't set you up for
post skateboarding,
emotional success post skateboarding, I wouldn't say.
How do you, as in there's no support? How do you mean by that?
Describe that?
Yeah, it's a pretty specific way of putting it.
I would say that maybe for me personally, I came out and I worked for New Balance, and I work for Nike now, and maybe in the corporate office environment. There's a lot of skills that you might have learned in your 20s coming up through that. Life on the road in a van, on tour, interacting with kids at demos and skate shops.
Doesn't perhaps prepare you for.
Working with brands on like video deadlines and editorial, and working with mags and on your own schedule. Completely on your own schedule doesn't set you up for it. Yeah. But I don't know. I'm a fast learner.
Well, yeah, right. but also you kind of like go. I've not been in your position, obviously, but from friends that have been in that similar position, it's quite quick. It seems, from being like having a particular setup and then that not being there, and then being a bit like, right, what do I do now, kind of thing.
It can be, I think. If I look back at it, for me, it was gradual enough. I had knee surgery, like full ACL reconstruction when I was 26. So going through that, you go through rehab and you go through physio, and you actually get quite professional about how you approach your career, because you're like, fuck, don't want to do that again. Yeah. So, right. You get physically fit, and you realize like you have to have you have responsibilities.
How long does that take, out of interest, to recover from that?
Is that a year, like 6 months to a year.
Okay, but you get quite functional about it. Like, okay, deal with that. Like,
yeah, and you're doing your rehab, you're doing your physio, you're taking it serious. I mean, I was learning all about anatomy, and then in that environment of rehab, I was thinking like, okay, this could happen again, and I'm going to be 30, and the kids will be 18. Shane O'Neill will be there, yeah, or whatever, and I'll be like having to do something. So I was kind of thinking about it fairly early.
Okay, it was in your mind a little bit.
Like, I should probably do something else. And then I studied HTML. I studied HTML and CSS, and then like did module on design for the social web. I did a biology course because I called up King's College in the United Kingdom about being a physiotherapist, because you get all hyped on physiotherapy when you're doing sports rehab. Yeah. Because everyone's there to improve.
Yeah, sure.
And then you realize, but then you'd have to do like it's not all sports physio. There's a lot of like rehabbing car crashes, and you're like, oh yeah, that's right. There's a reality to every job.
Yeah, that's perhaps not the initial.
But yeah, I was thinking about the life after skateboarding for a long time. I was always doing editorial work for mags, or like doing my own video projects, and did my own little branding project, and did the whole like top to bottom business process of that. So I was always kind of thinking about it, but I think that I don't know that I'm the exception or the rule when it comes to skaters.
So how's it now? Are you reconciled to it?
Oh, yeah, I have no choice.
Well, yeah, but doesn't mean that it's easy.
No, I'm reconciled to it. I'm getting on with things. I'm
Yeah.
good. Office work.
Yeah, so you're working for Nike.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
If you look on my LinkedIn profile, you can see that I'm a strategic planning manager.
I will be befriending you on LinkedIn straight after this.
I do strategy with Nike SB, work with the general manager, and then all the different people that run the functions at the company there, and just help things keep running.
Yeah, and is Portland home now?
Portland's home.
Yeah, you've been here, what, 10? Philip had just said, actually.
Portland, I mean, Ivor's 6, so that means we've been here 7 and a bit years.
Yeah. Weather reminds you of home?
Yeah, it does. Weather here is much, much better.
I think we got pretty lucky this week. It's been pretty nice.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. Everyone's been saying, brought the weather with you.
And winter here is it rains a fair bit. Then it's really nice for a spell, and then it'll storms will blow through, and then it'll be amazing and chilly, but the beautiful blue skies.
Yeah.
As opposed to Glasgow, where it seems like it's just
dark and slate grey.
October rolls in, and then it's just biblical darkness for literally 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty nice, aspect to this city. There's a lot going on.
And riding your bike here is about maybe 1 million times mellower and better than riding in Scotland.
Yeah.
That was something I noticed this summer because we did the Glasgow to Edinburgh bike mission, which was rad with all my old friends from the Scottish skate scene.
Oh, amazing.
And it was probably just the route, Glasgow to Edinburgh, between the two major cities in Scotland.
Yeah.
Is not going to be the raddest, kind of mellowest ride.
Yeah, sure.
As opposed to the northwest here, where we took the train away out of town and rode up through the forest to central or northern Oregon. That was really nice.
Yeah, we went down.
And then there was an undercover, perfect miniature vert ramp.
Right.
It wasn't that in Scotland.
Yeah, we went down the coast yesterday, and it's pretty nice, got to say. So do you reckon you could see yourself moving back home, or?
We think about that all the time. I did just start applying for my second green card yesterday.
Okay, right.
And I keep thinking, should I get citizenship? We'll see.
You don't have citizenship?
No, I just...
Nike can probably help you with that though, right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't like to be so presumptuous.
Surely they've got a person that deals with that.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Nice. Well, thanks for letting me come round and chat to you about that.
It's all right.
How was it? Was it all right?
Yeah. You want to just talk about all that stuff?
Just that?
Yeah.
Well, we can talk about more. What else do you want to talk about?
I don't know. I just wondered what was in your head when you were thinking about it.
I was just seeing where it went, really.
All right.
Yeah. I kind of thought that unfolded quite nicely.
Yeah, it's everything that's going on right now, at least.
Yeah. I mean, we could talk about old stuff if you want. I mean, it's up to you, really.
We could do 10 minutes on... Because I'm interested. I was thinking about Shire. I was thinking about Blueprint. I was thinking about all that stuff.
I mean, people would definitely like to hear about that. What have you been thinking about that?
Because people are always like, why do you leave Blueprint?
Why did you leave Blueprint?
For the money.
For the money?
No, I don't know. It seemed like I'd always wanted to try the States thing.
Yeah, I mean, you basically did a bit of a leap, didn't you? It seemed like. Because when was that era, the Blueprint panic? Like mid to late 90s, are we talking about?
Yeah. I want to say 97 to 99 to... or 2000 or so.
And you consciously thought, I fancy seeing a fucking... I mean, it's the...
No, it was always in the back of my head, but then the opportunity came up because I got on Circa with Jamie, and they were always like, when are you going to write for Zero? And I always thought, that's ridiculous. All are into the Misfits.
Yeah. Did you actually thought like, no, that what when you say that's ridiculous, as in like that couldn't be me kind of
Both.
thing.
It was like that couldn't be me, and also like Zero and me. That was sort of an interesting thing.
You were surprised then when he sort of.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think he saw in you then? And what were you not
I
seeing?
have no idea. I still have no idea.
Right.
But when it was when Lopez kept asking me
Right.
that I was like, well, I like Lopez too. That's interesting. And then when there was two people asking, it was like, there's something to it.
You make it sound like as if it just sort of happened to you, though. Surely there was a bit more calculation on your part to that, because you did after all come over here and put the work in.
Yeah, but I came over here originally on the strength of I had been getting a check from Panic and then Blueprint, so that subsidized my college time in university in Glasgow.
Yeah, this is when you were
so
still.
that meant that I had a grant to pay for university as well as student loans, and I had one more student loan to take, like that I was entitled to.
Right. You got a grant.
That's I got a grant and a student loan. It was really low interest.
When were you at university?
1996 to 9, basically. It was 1995 to 1999.
Don't get grants anymore, dear.
That's gone. Who did away with that?
Yeah, one of that lot. Right.
Was it one of the Conservatives?
I imagine so.
I've been hearing about them lately.
Yeah, they're in the news a lot back home. You're not missing much. Although you got your own problems over.
No, but I was okay at university. And then like I had this last student loan to take, and I was like, I'm pretty flush because I've been getting paid by enough by this little brand in the UK to get by.
Right.
So I used that to go to the States on like essentially a gap summer. I'll call it. It wasn't a gap year. It was a gap summer.
And what we trying to?
I wasn't trying to do anything. I was trying to go skating. We had so much fun. We bought a van in Vancouver. Me and a bunch of friends from Scotland.
Yeah.
Linked up with some friends from Vancouver that was just random skate connection because they'd got cheap tickets to come and visit Glasgow, and they were going to sleep under a bridge. And I saw them in Kelvin Grove Park, and I was like, "Where are you going?" And they were like, "Oh, we're going to sleep under this bridge." And I was
right.
like, no, come. We're going to watch the Element video over here at my friend Gary's house.
Right.
And it's funny, one thing led to another, and then we went out and visited them and did a road trip. There was no real calculation at all in any of that.
Right, it was just...
I got to San Francisco, and Ewan was living there, working at Noah's Bagels and filming for $10 a clip for 4-on-1 with a TRV 900 or whatever he had. And
so that's where that came from?
Yeah, he was like, you need to film a fucking part while you're here, man.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? It's like, yeah, film a pro tip, no, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Not a pro tip. It was a rookies. He was like, film a rookies, man.
This is the old Killer Bees, right?
We got the Killer Bees at Marshall's Dress for Less, or Ross Dress for Less, or something in Huntington Beach. Yeah. Filmed that. Shot an interview in Slap. Then went back to the SR trade show, and that's when like I had my first proper mental breakdown.
Right. So why do you think, given that you've looked back at all this obviously in quite some detail, what was it about that situation that you're in you think that led to that? Because it sounds pretty positive.
Yeah, that's the thing about depression and anxiety. On the surface, things do seem positive.
Yeah.
But somehow your brain
tells you it's not.
Just, you like conspiracy theories it all the way out to like, you know, some crazy place. I don't know.
So this is why when you went home and you were describing earlier, got your, you know, back to your mum's, you said, and
yeah, and then I had that space to sort it out.
Right, but you made the decision to like, I'm going to head back and take this opportunity, basically.
Eventually, after my sister got me out of my room and took me to the doctor to get on fluoxetine.
Right.
Which has always been a thing in my head of like, she was the one that took me to the doctor at that point. Right. And then I moved away and I was not there for her.
Right.
So. Not that, I mean, I can't feel guilty about that. I followed my path. And,
yeah, I don't think you should feel guilty about that.
I mean, it was always just an ironic thing that I have in my head of like, damn it, I wish I could have been there for her. In hindsight, I heard the warning signs in some of the stuff she was saying.
Right.
Where she was like, I'm sick and tired of struggling. And I'm like, only in hindsight do you hear those words in your memory and you're like, damn it.
They take on added significance. So when you look back at those skate years now, what do you think? I mean, that's a dickish thing to say anyway, because you're still skating, obviously. But you know what I mean, that period that you're talking about. Like, what do you...
I think the Seahorses track that McGee picked for the Blueprint video was good. I'm still not sure about
Seahorses.
500 miles by...
You're still back in Seahorses.
What's that?
You're still back in Seahorses.
That track's okay. 500 miles I'm still not sure about. That was Skin's idea.
Really? Yeah. We've got the Scottish guy. Let's put...
Bill Mackay was... I liked that because I picked that. And then the Cold War part I had that was Smog. I like that.
Which track was that? I don't remember that one.
It's called No Dancing by Smog off Knock Knock. And then there was a part in Strange World which wasn't really a part because I got hurt and then just had to be in montage. So I was kind of bummed on that.
Right. So and generally the choices you're happy with.
And then in the promo in 2006 that nobody ever saw, I did a 540 that Danny Way told me was solid. So those are my highlights from my skate career.
Take that one. And then the sad plan thumbs up from Lance.
Yeah. Even though we sent him the angle that was a bit like... We didn't send him both angles. We just... So...
You sent him the...
We sent him the angle where it was...
The fake news...
It looked good.
The fake news angle.
Fake news angle, exactly. Yeah. Still time, though.
Still time. So there you go. That was me and John, and I hope you got as much out of that conversation as I did. I decided to leave that little exchange at the end in because it made me laugh. And also, I'm talking about the bit where he was like, you're not going to ask me about skateboarding then? I mean, it goes some way to demonstrating the way I approach these interviews. I just thought people might be interested in, really. Something I chatted about in the Charlie Dark interview many moons ago, actually. It's about finding your angle when interviewing somebody who's done a lot of press and who's really well known. And it's about balancing what you think they're going to respond to with what you know the audience is going to want to talk about or hear us talk about. And then that's also compounded by my own desire to have a natural and free-flowing conversation that isn't too obviously agenda-driven by me, as in I've got a list of things I want to tick off. I mean, obviously, if it goes in that direction, then I'll happily do that. But yeah, you try and balance these things is what I'm saying. And I just thought that exchange at the end was funny because that was what was going on there, really. Me trying to judge that. At the time, after that conversation, I really couldn't see a way of saying, so tell me about Zero, that just didn't seem totally tactless and crowbarred in. So when John brought it up like that, gave me the perfect get out clause, capped the whole conversation off nicely. And like I said at the beginning, I just thought it was funny. So yeah, I want to thank John for his trust, openness and honesty when it came to that conversation, discussing those issues. Like I mentioned in the introduction, if you have been affected by any of those issues discussed, I'm going to put some links to organisations mentioned by John and other organisations that might be able to help in my show notes over at my website. Incidentally, if it's your first time listening, like I say, you'll find show notes to this and every other episode over at www.wearelooking.sideways.com. And you'll also find the back catalogue featuring interviews with other skateboarders such as Cara Burnside, Jamie Thomas, Steve Douglas, Nick Jensen, Tim Layton Boyce, and more. So go and have a listen. Plenty there to get stuck into if you enjoyed this one. On the housekeeping corner tip, just going to say what I said last week about the newsletter, actually. You can sign up at the website for that. If you do, you'll get one weekly email from me. You'll be joining thousands of listeners in receiving that. It's my 5 things email in which I list the 5 things I thought were worth sharing each week. You'll need to sign up via the link on the website for that and then opt in through the email you receive after that. Check your spam and junk mail for that one. It's pertinent at the minute because, as I mentioned last week, I'm going to be sending out links to a couple of secret bonus episodes in the next week or so. And you're only going to be able to hear those if you sign up to the newsletter. So get to it. That's it for this week. It's Christmas. I just did actually record my Christmas special with my friends Tim and Gendel, who are my annual Christmas guests, and a lot of fun that was. Actually ended up ticking off that classic podcast trope of getting drunk while doing an episode. Not actually done that before. I actually find drinking doing these really stressful, because, you know, when you're pissed, you can't really concentrate as well as you can when you're sober. And I usually need to concentrate doing these. But, you know, they're my mates, them two. I turned up, they thrust a couple of beers in my hand, and by the end of it, we were pretty shit-faced, really. All the better for it. That one will be coming out on Christmas Day, as usual, and is a right old load of festive waffle. So, subscribe if you're not already, if you want to check that one out. My thanks to Travel Portland, Hertz, Kex Portland, and Black Diamond PR for their help setting this one up, and for the help with the rest of the Portland episodes and the trip as a whole. Couldn't have done it without them, so thank you. I'll be back next week with another one. Nice one.